Welcome everyone to the Journal of Marketing webinar series. My name is Christine Moorman. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Marketing. Thank you for joining us today. And thank you to all of the scholars and practitioners from all over the world. We see many, many people signed up for the webinar, so we're very pleased that you're able to make it and join us today for this event. So as many of you know, the Journal of Marketing develops and disseminates knowledge about real-world marketing questions relevant to scholars, educators, managers, policymakers, consumers, and other societal stakeholders around the world. And the goal of this webinar series is to increase the impact of research published in the Journal of Marketing and to offer insights to both managers and scholars on important topics in the field of marketing. And I can think of no more important topic than the one that we're going to address today. I'm so pleased to have joining me today the guest editors for the special issue on Better Marketing for a Better World that was published by the Journal of Marketing in June, Rajesh Chandy, Gita Johar, and John Roberts. And thank you, John, for staying up into the middle of the night there in Australia. I'm so pleased. It's been quite a journey for our team, and we are delighted with the special issue and look forward to this conversation today. So the outline for the webinar is we're going to talk about the imperative as we see it. We'll discuss some of the assumptions that we think get in the way of moving forward on better marketing for a better world. Then we'll take you through a couple of exercises where we really do want your participation and in thinking about how to map better marketing to a better world. We'll talk about the special issue, the initiative that we've put in place around BMBW.org, and there'll be an opportunity for questions and discussion at the end. So if you have questions, you can feel free to place those into the Q&A tab in Zoom at any point in the conversation. So let's go ahead and get started with the event. I'm going to turn it over to, I can't remember who's going first now. Is it Gita is going to go first? Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Welcome, everyone. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why this BMW imperative. And notice we call it an imperative. We all agree it's really important, but we think in this moment, this should really be an imperative. I'd like to start by reading out a couple of quotes. And these quotes, as you can see, the first one says, profits will continue to be essential and basic to corporate survival, but the major challenge to business today may be to meet the societal needs of a changing environment. To me, this could be ripped from the headlines today, as could the next quote that you can see here. However, these quotes are actually from the Journal of Marketing 1971 special issue on societal and environmental trends. So 50 years on, what you see is some of these same preoccupations and concerns that marketing folks and marketing scholars had are still coming up time and again. So the climate, things like that, we see that coming back in this special issue as well. So I would like to actually ask you to take a poll, and I want to learn about the audience and really try to understand where you all are at in terms of thinking about the importance of better marketing for a better world. So we're going to launch a poll, and we'd really appreciate your responses. Okay, I see we have some responses coming in, and I'm very pleased to report that 66% of folks in the audience, a self-selected group, no doubt, said that this is a really important, very important topic. So we also asked this same question to our JM associate editors as well as to our advisory board members, and we had about over 40 people respond. And what you can see here is that over 60%, just like in our poll, rated this topic to be really, really important. So we have a kind of metaphor when we talk about this.
Sorry about that. There's a little glitch in this pattern of slides here. Here we go.
So just like in our survey, 66% rated it a 7. Over here, you see in our survey, 60% or more rated it as very important. So what we like to say is that right now, it seems like BMBW is, all of us think it's really important, but like, what exactly do we mean when we say BMBW? And I'm going to turn it over to Rajesh to talk about that.
Thank you, Gita. Looking at the news these days can be sometimes rather depressing. It seems like the world is rather than getting better, is getting worse in many ways. The world seems filled with problems, and it can cause you to despair. But and it's particularly the case in many parts of the world as businesses have lost their lives, and and many others have lost their lives too. Chris, can you move next, please? Around the world, businesses are losing their fortunes, their years of work, and wondering what to do next. Please, next. And it's especially poignant and heartbreaking in developing countries. Go on, Chris. Now, Gita mentioned 50 years ago the special issue of the Journal of Marketing. A little more than 50, about almost 52 years ago, Cottle and Levy had pointed out, and they were facing a world of many changes as well. They pointed out marketing is a pervasive societal activity that goes considerably beyond the selling of toothpaste, soap, and steel. So there's a much loftier purpose to marketing. Next, please. When we asked the question to our AEs, one of our AEs said this, or the associate editors of the Journal of Marketing said this: marketing too often has the image of being a discipline that just tries to lure people into buying things they do not need. And so it's important to show that this is a misconception, and that marketing really can play a very different role. And in fact, if anything, as marketers think about these seemingly depressing situations in the world, they see, Chris, next please. Yeah, not a world of problems necessarily, but a world of opportunities. The CEO of Unilever, Paul Polman, uses this particular slide of the UN Sustainable Development Goals to point out one cannot think of a more compelling set of customer needs, a manifestation and articulation of a more compelling set of customer needs than the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. These are some of the greatest needs facing the world. And as a marketer who's attuned to customer needs, one only needs to look at these big, grand challenges facing the world. And in fact, a bunch of CEOs, including Paul Polman and several others, had come together to publish a report called Better Business for a Better World. And here's what they had to say about in a summary. Despite the economic and social gains of the past 30 years, and crucially here, next please, Chris, the world's current economic model is deeply flawed. Now, marketing is not incidental to the world's economic model. Marketplaces are not incidental to the world's economic model. They are central to the economic model. And that's the part of the logic why. Because as marketers, we should care. Academics, practitioners, all of us should care about these outcomes, partly because society gives us a license to operate. And if society decides that our contributions are leading not to a better world, but to a worse world, or that we are, or we're irrelevant to the world, then it might decide to not give us that license to operate. And as we think about long-term goal, sustainable goal, and growth, which is a topic that's dear to many marketers' hearts, this is terribly important as well. what I've noticed appeals very directly to many marketers is the fact that many young people, as they look at companies to join, decide which company to join, in part based on whether or not the company is seen as, or the organization, not just commercial companies, is seen as being good for the world. And that's a particularly compelling reason why. Additionally, many financial options, many collaborations become available. These impact-focused options become available as a result of focusing on these better world outcomes. The organization itself can maintain a sense of purpose and, importantly, stay relevant. Now, as we think about, therefore, what is good for the world, and link that to what is good for the world, it may appear as if there should be lots of win-win outcomes. As we thought about it, talked to a lot of folks, and looked at the research on this topic, a key point that came through is that these win-win outcomes are not necessarily to be taken for granted or necessarily necessary. Chris, can you next please? There could be some outcomes where the company, the firm wins, but the world loses. And as scholars and as interested individuals, we should not be shy about exposing these and helping practitioners avoid the dark side of marketing. There could also be situations where things are good for the world, but it's just not economically or in other ways sustainable for the firm, a lose-win. So this is where collaborations, such as the ones we're discussing today, become relevant. And at the same time, there are the lose-lose outcomes, where marketers do frankly stupid things, myopic things, where that lead to long-term outcomes that are bad both for the firm as well as for the organization. As we think about this set of options, it's important to be able to know what is real and what's not. What is greenwashing? What is window dressing? And what is real impact? And that is where a group such as what we have here, of academics as well as practitioners, is so crucial, because these collaborations are essential to have rigorous, objective research that points out why some activities on the part, why some marketing may lead to better or worse outcomes for the world. Let me hand things over to Gita back again for a couple more polls.
Thank you, Rajesh. So Rajesh has made the case for the topics and the importance of better marketing for a better world. So we want to try to get your pulse on where do you think at least the scholarly community is in terms of studying these topics. So for the first poll, we'd like you to answer to what degree the field has addressed these BMBW topics. All right, just some quick math here. I think it's 80% of people who responded to this poll in this audience have rated that a 4 or below, meaning that we have either ranging from not at all to somewhat addressed BMBW topics. And remarkably, that's exactly the same number that we got from our associate editors and our advisory board, and 80% there as well rated it 1 to 4. So the last poll for this meeting, we want to ask you how effective has the field been in addressing these topics. Okay, so in fact, over here, it's 90%, I believe, of you have responded 4 or below, meaning that we have really not been very effective in addressing BMBW topics. And this also squares well with the results from our AEs and advisory board, where over 80% rated it a 1 to 4. So we like to think about this as in terms of a metaphor. So if you will, all of us agree that these topics are critical. There is a BMBW imperative and it's really important. At the same time, we believe that we haven't done a great job of addressing these topics and we haven't been very effective at addressing these topics. So if you think about it, BMBW in our view is still somewhat maybe backstage, maybe side stage. And what we would love to see and what we hope we can all work together to do is to really move better marketing for a better world to the center stage. And with that, I'll turn it over to Rajesh to talk about why this may not have happened. What are the barriers standing in the way to better marketing for a better world, really taking the center stage?
I'll point to a question in the Q&A section that our friend C.V. Bhattacharya asked, which is why, when, why, and how did marketing lose its way? And that actually helped this next set of discussions that we wanted to point to get at some of those points, and see if we can come back to that. And I'll also note, Catherine, I accidentally omitted to respond to you. Please feel free to share images. So back to this, as we thought about this very question that CB asked, which is why isn't there more research, and what are some of the things that are stopping practitioners? We said there are three broad sets of assumptions that our field seems to have as we study and engage in rigorous work on better marketing, better world topics. One is who is the primary actor? The second is about what are the objectives of marketing? And the third is about how better marketing, better world topics can be studied. The editorial, which we urge you to look at, please, goes in some length into each of these assumptions and the reasons behind and potential solutions to them. Today, we're going to briefly look at the first two and go in some greater depth into the third one. The first two, well, one is about who is the primary actor who's appropriate for study in marketing. And assumption number one is, well, marketing is what people with the phrase marketing in their job titles, the chief marketing officer, the marketing manager, the brand manager, or something related to that, that's what marketing is. But in fact, if we expand our definition of marketing to a set of activities and a set of exchanges and that have an impact on the world, and expand the protagonist, we see a completely different set of outcomes. A couple of examples here from the special issue. Wang, Lewis, and Singh have a paper in the special issue where the protagonist is the policymaker, not the marketer in a strict sense. It's about demarketing as well. Next, please. Anderson, Chintagunta, German, and Belkacem have a paper where the protagonist is the entrepreneur who does marketing, yes, but does many other things as well. So the assumption here that marketing is only for people who do specifically marketing related topics only may be constraining our view of the world and preventing us to take the perspective of other protagonists. The other assumption is about who is the primary actor who we should be studying, and here around that, the second assumption is about businesses. And when we say business, too often in business schools, we assume this is about large firms and CSR activities of large firms, the potential impact of large firms, and so the challenges they face. The special issue also has some terrific articles that step away from this assumption. So, for instance, Chinese farmers were the focus of Zhang, Chintagunta, and Kalwani's paper on using social media to drive adoption of sustainable pesticides in China. Or marketplace literacy and its effects on communities where the individual is both a consumer and potentially an entrepreneur. A remarkable study in India and Tanzania by Viswanathan Umashankar, Sri Kumar, and Goresny. Next, please. The second set of assumptions is about what should be the objectives of marketing. And very often the assumption is, well, it's about improving business profits and shareholder value. We go into some length in the paper about why this need not be the case, and the world has moved on quite a bit. Even very strongly profit-oriented businesses have moved on increasingly to a focus on long-term value that incorporates all of the stakeholders that are relevant to them. Or that research and marketing should focus only on customer or firm level outcomes. We tend to ignore, based on this assumption, the spillovers that might exist on society and the world at large. A terrific example of an article in the special issue that looks at these kinds of spillovers is in the area of luxury brands and promoting the use of used brands, used products, so that less waste happens, and products that are perceived as durable may actually lead to better world as well as better marketing outcomes. Next, please. I'm going to now hand things over to John, who will take us through a core part of this discussion around how we study better marketing, better world topics. John.
So when we're looking at these assumptions, Rajesh has spoken about the who's it for, how is it done, what problems are addressed, but we also found some assumptions about how you might study this effectively. And I want to look at particularly 4 assumptions, which I'll outline and then go into in some more depth. The first assumption, that it's really only relevant to niche journals, not mainstream journals. The second assumption, that basically it comes at the expense of rigor. The third assumption, that it's hard and maybe should be done by senior authors, and the fourth assumption, that it can't be mapped. So if we look at the first assumption, that this is only possible to target this sort of work at niche journals, we're very lucky to have the editor-in-chief of our most prestigious journal, the Journal of Marketing, here today. And I'd just like Chris to address the question as, would she welcome, and the journal welcome, research in this sort of area?
Thank you, John. And I think the answer is that this is not a niche topic. I think the special issue in some sense speaks for itself, that the Journal of Marketing is really interested in better marketing for a better world topics. But I also think that this is something we see, I mean, it's had a long history in the field, and we see more and more journals accepting and publishing papers on this topic. Moving this to the center stage, as Gita said, is really the objective that we have. And I think that, just to be very clear, the Journal of Marketing is very interested in these topics.
Thanks, Chris. As Chris said, we're seeing quite a lot of stuff in JMR, Marketing Science, and many of our other excellent journals as well as other journals which are strong as well, like JPPM. The second assumption about how to do this work is that it's very hard to do this work well in an academic sense of the word, and so this work is going to come at the expense of rigor. Well, if you look at this special issue, we're seeing in the special issue experimentation, we're seeing quasi-experiments, we're seeing the use of archival data, surveys, interviews. We're seeing some of the state-of-the-art techniques being used in very effective, informative and interesting ways, and ways that pass our tests for rigorous, exciting, replicable research. And so it's very possible to do first-class scientific research in this area. The third assumption that we'd like to challenge in how is that this is really hard. And if it's really hard, then junior faculty shouldn't do this risky, hard stuff, and they should leave it to those people who have been around the eminence grise of our society. Well, if we look at the special issue, that's just not true. If you look on that right-hand side, here's a whole host of junior faculty members who have wonderful, interesting, diverse papers from all around the world in this special issue. And we think it's very exciting to see these young scholars. In fact, it may even be that young scholars are going to be better at this than old scholars, because, as Warren Buffett said, the change of habits are too light to be felt until they're too heavy to be broken. And maybe more elderly senior scholars, in fact, are less able to break out and do interesting stuff. And the last bit of how that I'd like to address is maybe we're talking different languages to the people we'd like to influence. Maybe our better marketing language is not that compatible with the better world language. And I think the answer to that is probably a maybe. That this is possibly one of the most challenging parts of the process of doing this sort of research. And we'll come back to that later in the seminar. But we did do a text analysis to look at, does our better marketing papers, do they correspond to the language used in the Better World papers? We took one particular part of Better World, the United Nations Sustainable Goals, looked at 184 documents there and compared those to the language used in the submissions that we received for the special issue. And by way of comparison, we also looked at the language in perhaps the best known marketing management textbook, Kotler and Keller, to see, are we using the same sorts of words as the language of the Better World literature, or are we more using the Kotler and Keller book? And in that little diagram below, you can see that the Better Marketing for Better World on the right there is very, very close to the Kotler and Keller language and quite a long way away from the United Nations language. How? Well, let's have a look at the stakeholders. Who are we talking to? With the United Nations, we're talking to countries, governments, organizations, communities. Who's marketing talking to? Marketing's talking to customers, companies, consumers, businesses, as we might expect. Have we managed to bridge that gap with better marketing? No, we're talking primarily about consumers, individuals, businesses, customers. So we would argue there's probably room to actually increase our stakeholder focus into different areas. Not just to whom do we look, but what sorts of decisions, activities are we trying to influence? Well, with the United Nations, what we're trying to influence is ensuring staff, advocacy, building staff, implementing, addressing staff. How does that compare to better marketing? Well, marketing's about the marketing activity, customer facing, the brand, the product, the price. How well we done in bridging that with better marketing for a better world? Well, you can see we're still looking primarily at the activities and the interests about Kotler and Keller, and less about the sorts of things that are exercising the minds of the United Nations. And then the last thing, for whom, what doing, and what's the outcome? The sort of outcomes that the United Nations is looking for are sustainability, publications and promulgation of knowledge, financing and growth. How does that compare to marketing? Well, Kotler and Keller would suggest it's about the customer firm dyad, the sales, the value added, the purchasing, the profit. How do we fit in the middle? Well, we're very much more about the marketing than the better world. So we would argue that there's room for us to actually develop a common language with some of the stakeholders in Better World so that our better marketing can more effectively address their problems. So at this stage, I'm going to hand it over to Chris, who's going to talk to us a little bit about how we do that.
Thank you, John. So John's talked about the language barriers. I think there are a lot of other barriers to mapping better marketing to a better world. And so what we wanted to do is to take a few minutes here to talk about some of the different ways that you might think about that. And we're going to offer you in particular 2 different paths to mapping better marketing to a better world. In the first path, what we do is we start with some aspect of marketing, and then we try to imagine what those better world connections might be. And in the second path, we start with a world problem, and then we work back towards marketing and imagine what kinds of changes to marketing or marketing actions, tools, et cetera, can be implemented to influence, or ways of thinking about the world that might offer solutions to those world problems. So let's go through examples on both of these. And this is where we'd love to have your input, and you can use the Q&A tab to do that. So let's go through this path 1 example. This is where we're going from marketing to a better world. Take something that's just a core issue of marketing, personal selling and sales force management. You can see there 13% of the jobs in the United States, many more around the world, $1 trillion spent. And just kind of thinking then about, you know, what sales involves. Of course, it involves the salespeople, the customers that they sell to, the teams that they're part of, some of the different tools and incentives and techniques, but also thinking about the fact that that sales occurs within a community. And more broadly, as we think about how to connect this to the world, we should think about the fact that obviously salespeople have families. And again, they live in a broader community as well. So just playing around with this, how might this topic of personal selling and sales force management be construed as a better world topic? So just lay in what you think a statement, or if you want to, it could be a prediction or just a statement of that kind of connection. And Rajesh and I will look at those, and we'll probably comment on a few of them. Please go ahead and use the Q&A tab for that. I see a lot of questions in here as well, so thank you for those. But go ahead and just type in any connection that you see that you think would help connect personal selling and sales force management to a better world. So these are nice. Go ahead, Rajesh.
No, this is great. So clearly lots of possibilities here. And I keep using this in some of the responses while my colleagues here have been speaking, have been multitasking and looking at the Q&A. And the word that keeps coming up in my mind is opportunity. And this is exactly one way to approach these opportunities.
I love these. These are great ideas, you guys. You really have the connection. And this is an area where we think there's a lot of opportunity. So please feel free to what people are saying there. It's everything from, you know, the well-being of the sales force to how this might actually motivate people. I love that, Ankur.
Diversity, inclusion.
And the use of non-predatory selling techniques. These are excellent. Diversity and inclusion. So thank you for that. So keep the wheels turning. Just wanted to share one example from the special issue that did this incredibly well. That is a really nice paper. All of these papers are wonderful. This is just one that we'll call out, like Rajesh was calling out the others. This is a paper by Havel, Aliva, and Linnesmeyer looking at the effect of variable compensation schemes, which is a very common thing that's used by companies to motivate their salespeople, and how that influences both the mental and physical health of salespeople. So they actually see that people, you know, end up, you know, not showing up to work. They report doctor's visits, et cetera, et cetera. So you can see that paper, and that's, again, a very clear connection to a better world. So let me turn it over to Rajesh, who's going to take us through the second example and broaden it out to a better world.
Well, and in fact, that example you just pointed out, Chris, gets at some of these the good health outcomes in the UN SDGs. I'm going to flip it. So if we go back to the two circles that Chris has pointed out, Chris. So Chris pointed out a way for us to start with a marketing question, in this case, sales forces, and imagine, and you've come up with wonderfully imaginative and a remarkably diverse set of better world connections. Let's flip that. Let's think of topics that have not yet, at least in as Gita put it, the mainstream or center stage, have not been as common in the marketing world. And think of better world. Start with better world outcomes or problems in the world, and imagine how marketing can help address these problems. So the problem that I'd like to pose as we think of this path 2, where we start with problems, is the following. And it's SDG 4, it's gender equality, a topic that's, I suspect, dear to the hearts of many in this group. And it's a broad set of topics, everything from ending discrimination against women and girls to eliminating violence against women and girls to eliminating practices such as child marriage, recognizing and valuing unpaid and domestic work, ensuring leadership participation, as well as access to health and sexual and reproductive health and rights. Now, we haven't seen a whole lot of work in these topics. And in fact, this is a challenge that in the OECD recently had a report that here's the cover page, an uphill battle is what they said. It's a big challenge all around the world. A recent article in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences said in the United States, progress towards gender equality has slowed or stalled. And that was even before we had the challenge of COVID. And during COVID in Europe, the EU had these numbers. Some of the folks who were at the front line, these heroes who've been doing just remarkable, incredibly brave work, are largely women. 90+% in many cases are women. And yet, if you think about attitudes and mores around the world, I find this particular statistic really quite striking. So some of you may know the World Values Survey, which every so many years goes around and asks questions to lots of people all around the world. And this one is one that they ask on a regular basis. Do you agree with the following statement? When jobs are scarce, now remember, in many parts of the world where jobs are disappearing, jobs are indeed scarce. When jobs are scarce, men should have more of a right to a job than women. Do you agree or not? And in substantial parts of the world, more than half, in some parts of the world, more than 80%, more than 90% of those who respond to this question say, when jobs are scarce, men should have more of a right to a job than women. Now, what is the role of marketing in all of this? How can we frame this terribly important and extremely difficult and long-term and pervasive challenge as a marketing question? So over to you again. Let's go through an exercise of starting with the problem, big hairy problem, and thinking of the role that marketing can play to make it better, or might play to make things worse. Again, please use the Q&A function. So how can we how can better marketing, in its broadest sense, help achieve gender equality and empowerment? Okay, communication. Products, that's interesting. Products to reduce gender equality. Yeah, so I know people who are marketing in remote parts of the world feminine hygiene products that may help girls remain in school, for example. It's an open question whether they do. Create products to understand the negative effects, yes, the beauty industry and the potential damage it might do, to great point here.
I like the idea.
Full of education, yeah, Murli, thank you. Marketing education. Marketing as a means of educating, yes, as well. Acknowledging, Rachel, the challenge of single mothers in the workplace. There's been some terrific work on productivity increases as a result of childcare, better access to childcare, and randomizing access to childcare and what effects that has. Fashion, the roles, stereotypes, persuasion, awareness, communications, product and promotion. So lots and lots of ideas. Gosh, thank you. You're a wonderfully creative group here. And once again, it's not hard to think of creative ways to address these questions. So let me hand things over by summarizing some of the result of, or at least with some abstracting from the exercises we've gone through, we've done so far. One way to frame this would be to ask, why is the outcome important to marketing? For instance, gender parity. Why is this important to marketing? For instance, health. Why is this important to marketing? And as many of you pointed out, does marketing make the problem worse? Or can marketing provide a solution or an explanation to better understand the problem? And these are ideas that we've suggested in the editorial for our field to approach better marketing for a better world problem. And so therefore, with that as background, let me hand things back to my colleagues to talk about the journal marketing special issue.
Thank you, Rajesh. I see we're a little short on time, so I'm going to go through the special issue pretty quickly because I know you can all find this online, and we are putting the link that will take you up to all of the articles which are currently available, open access for you to download and read. The special issue, of course, this is the cover, and what's interesting is that we ended up, as we had 239 submissions, we ended up with 4 clusters of papers around sustainability and climate, economic and social empowerment, health and well-being, and pro-social giving. What's remarkable, as I said, not only that these topics emerge, which is fantastic, but also when we go back to that 1971 special issue, we called out with these points over here to the right that in fact these same topics were rose to the surface in 1971. So we think it's time to really now continue to take dead aim against these and work to bring the field fully into this better world status. This is a list of the articles. There were 14 articles in the end on each of these topics. We listed the authors. You can find all of those up on the website. Wonderful pieces. And one of the things that I'll mention for each of these and each topic, the researchers really did a good job highlighting what practitioners can do, how scholars, especially young scholars, can jump in on these topics and pursue a research program that's fresh and interesting and powerful. We really, as editors, we sort of push them to do that because we want the articles to be generative, which is the ultimate complement to any piece, that other people pick up on your ideas and run with it. So we wanted the articles themselves to have the seeds of future actions on the part of practitioners, but also research for all of us in the field. So John mentioned the diversity. There was a methodological diversity, which was really quite nice. Countries around the world that participated, and then a range of scholars, including 10 PhD students or recently hired junior faculty. So bravo to all of you for jumping in on these important topics. So let me turn it over to Gita now, who's going to talk about the Better World Initiative. Gita and John are going to cover this topic, and then we'll get to your Q&A quickly.
Okay, I might jump in at this stage if that's all right, Chris. One of the things we found as we edited the special issue was just how many, not just great scholars and senior scholars and wise scholars in our profession, but scholars from everywhere, and not just scholars, but practitioners were really interested in this topic and really wanted to push it further. If we contrast that with the special issue 50 years ago, we thought, how can we make sure that the momentum that we believe this special issue has gained, how can we keep that momentum going? And we've registered a URL, BMBW.org, the London Business School, and specifically the Wheeler Institute within the London Business School has been magnificent in supporting us to do that. And together, we've actually thought we want to harness this energy and the potential that we see to do this, because we believe that you can build bridges, and we've got the ability to build bridges between academics and practitioners through research collaborations, to build bridges between marketing and other fields of academic endeavour. There's a lot, for example, on health policy, to build bridges between non-traditional stakeholders like marketing academics and other societal actors like the United Nations and its bodies, and to build bridges between developed economies and emerging ones. So, for example, emerging markets can teach us in developed markets a huge amount about leapfrogging technology, and they have. So this exciting idea of building bridges is something that Gita's going to talk about in a little bit more detail.
Okay, in the interest of time, I'm going to be quick, but all these details are in our editorial. And if you look at the chat box, you're going to see links to the special issue. So let me just give you top line 3 pillars that we are hoping to support through the BMBW.org initiative. The first one that we thought was really important is to really bring the community together. And by community, we mean everyone who is interested in the topic of better marketing for a better world, across disciplines, scholars, as well as practitioners. So we want to bring everyone together through workshops and also have annual conferences and a competition. And this is something that we think can really create some momentum coming out of the special issue. The second thing we want to do is really think about how to create training and education for not just doctoral students, but for anyone interested in studying research or interested in research questions with a BMBW focus. And for that, we'd like to run pro seminars online where we actually provide both skills, tools, as well as content knowledge. And the last thing is to provide resources. And one of the most important resources we thought would be to really point people to existing data sets, as well as crowdsource and learn from everyone who's willing to share their data or point us to interesting data and put that on the bmbw.org website, and then complement that with training on how these data sets have been used in papers and then how they can be used as well. So how can you all help? First of all, thank you so much for being at this launch webinar. And we'd love for you all to join us as members of BMBW. So please look for an email invitation, and it is opt-in. If you'd like to hear more from us, please do opt into that email. We'd love the kind of attendance we have today at all of our workshops and conferences. So please let us know. The contact for the initiative is also in the chat box. Please let us know if you'd like to be a speaker or a commentator or attendee, and we're going to try to mix things up and bring in people, different people to these events. And you can also help us by telling us anything about data sets that exist. We have a few of them on the website, but we're really looking for help in trying to crowdsource and get a list of data sets, and then we can run the training around using these data sets. And finally, let's all work together, and we'd love to create partnerships and collaborations across boundaries to test all of these better marketing ideas. So a question we can all ask, hopefully at the end of this seminar, is BMBW, if not now, then when? And if not us, then who? In that spirit, we have 4 upcoming webinars, and each of these webinars is related to one of those themes in the special issue. So we have the authors of the papers in the special issue who will be present and talking about the inspiration for their ideas, as well as talking about their papers. That is the first hour of the webinar. In the second hour, we really want to build that community. So by invitation, you can accept our invitation to attend the second part of this webinar, where you will mingle and hopefully generate a lot of ideas and a lot more research and a lot more collaborations. So these are the 4 webinars. You see the 9th June is the one coming up first on sustainability and climate concerns. Again, if you look in the chat, you'll see a link so you can go and register for these webinars. And the 4 of them are the 9th, the 16th, the 21st, and the 28th. And they start at 12 noon Eastern time, and they go up to 2. So you can opt to go for the first hour, the first and second, whatever you'd like to do. So with that, we'd like to end and actually open it up to you for questions for the last 10 minutes. Thank you very much.
There have been lots and lots of questions. Thank you, Gita. Lots and lots of questions. And some of them have to do with the logistics of it, so the PowerPoint and the recording. Chris, maybe you can talk about whether the PowerPoint and the recording will be available and where.
Yes, the recording and the PowerPoint will be made available on the Journal of Marketing website. We'll also put them up on BMBW when they're available. It may take a day for the recording, so stand by for that. But all of these materials will be available to you to access and watch again and share with others.
Terrific. Thank you. And there were a few themes around looking beyond the big business and what big businesses are doing, and looking to other types of marketers. Any reflections from the editors on this point?
I think it's very exciting, and I think there's a lot of opportunity, particularly in non-traditional markets, like not in the United States, where some of these liaisons between small businesses, small to medium businesses, emerging businesses are probably a little bit easier to construct sometimes than the United States. And I see one of the things this group can do perhaps is actually start helping in generating some of these connections between academia and industry.
Yeah, thank you, John. Hugh Wilson points out the world can't afford sustainable marketing to be a niche in a few blue chips and a modest number of academics for a single decade. In fact, others point out, what will the 2071 issue of the Journal of Marketing say about what is happening here? I'm hopeful that we'll have a great deal of progress on the topic, and certainly the creativity that many of you have shown in coming up with questions and answers attests to that. This is just the start of this journey, and so let me reiterate the point that my colleagues made about being part of the BMBW initiative. A few other questions around, well, Al Silk has a question. How can other modes of inequality, such as income and wealth, that are related to gender equality, be addressed within the framework of free market systems? Any reflections?
Well, marketing creates a lot of value for both customers and the employees who are engaged in its production. I think we discount the way in which marketing, especially people who are interacting with customers or entrepreneurs who are doing marketing. There's a lot of ways to resolve income inequality and giving people hope. That so marketing has a role in that, not just in promoting the idea, but in actually offering people the knowledge and skills so that they can make that transformation in their lives.
And I think the other thing, Al, is that if we look beyond the dyad, beyond the marketer customer dyad, we can give skills and knowledge and insight to a lot of other players like regulators who can actually help make sure that our society is a fairer, juster, richer place.
I wanted to let people know that all of the articles from the special issue are available free. Some of you don't have subscriptions. So if you go up to the website, that was pasted into the chat function that Tiago from the Wheeler Institute placed in there earlier, you should be able to go up and open any of the articles there, at least for the next period of time.
Yep, as well as the summaries that the authors have written. For those of you who are practitioners and may wish to get a shorter, more direct description of what the key points are without getting into some of the academic detail, those summaries might be particularly handy. There are some questions around other journals. So Gita, you were involved with, you're actively involved with the Association of Consumer Research, ACR. John, you've been very actively involved in marketing science. I'm co-editing a special issue on the business and climate change and management science. A bunch of other journals are also pursuing these. Any thoughts about the field overall and other journals, whether there are similar initiatives being considered?
Just jump in to say, just in the last couple of years, we've seen so much of a spotlight on this issue across the journals, whether it's the Journal of the Association of Consumer Research, Journal of Consumer Psychology, they've all had special issues. And then when we went back to look at papers, not even in the special issues, more generally, there clearly is momentum behind this topic. And what I see is a lot of scholars addressing some of the issues that you highlighted today, Rajesh.
One more question from Matthew Quint. What recommendations do you have for interdisciplinary efforts on this? Actually, this relates to a question that Dave Reebstein, who had helped some of us think about these issues very early on, also asked that there are initiatives underway in other disciplines on similar themes. And so what recommendations do you have for interdisciplinary efforts on this? As well as on defining good, by the way.
Yeah, well, one of the things that always helps with building bridges is to focus on the problem. So not to be caught up in your own theoretical paradigms or your own methodological paradigms, but when you focus on the problem, whether it's with people in strategy or people in AI or in behavioral work, then there's a point of connection where you can actually get work done. And that's been one of the nice things about the special issue and this team, is that I think we were stronger together because we checked each other, that we weren't just going to serve one part of the field, we wanted to serve the entire field. There is a question here, Rajesh, from Dion Nickerson about the fact that we see so few articles focused on racism and discrimination. I think we're seeing more. We're starting to see a few more. I know we are at the Journal of Marketing, but I agree, Dion. I think, and that's a topic, like gender inequality, racial equality is an area where marketing can play a role. And so I would urge the field, this is something that is really important in our world. I mean, it has been important, but now it's particularly salient to more people as we see problems going on in our world. So it would, maybe this is something that we can come back to in one of our workshops as we think about, really important problems. I know it's Gita's, one of her roles at Columbia is as, involved in diversity and equity and inclusion. So thank you for pointing this out, Dion.
And in fact, if I can add to that, Chris, Dion is an assistant professor at Indiana University. She and I've had conversations on related topics. And Dion, and to the other junior faculty and researchers in the audience, I'd say this is a terrific opportunity for you to help define a phenomenon, a terribly important phenomenon for our field, right? And be among the pioneers in this field. Few other areas in our field or elsewhere allow an individual going into the community now to be the leader who has helped start a new field. And that's hugely exciting. And what better set of topics can we think of than some topics that help create a better world? So this is where we're in this profession at in some ways in a difficult time, but in many other ways in a very exciting time of intellectual ferment, where lots of ideas are happening and you can help shape the way the field moves. With that, go on, John. I think we're running out of time. Last point to John.
Okay, sorry. If I could just add to that, the time to really do well in marketing is turbulent times. And because that's when change is much easier to affect. We're living in very turbulent times. And so if you look at things like fake news, there are some very, very exciting issues in the very hard times which we're living. So I think it's a fantastic time to look at these issues. Thank you, Rajesh.
Terrific. And I'll actually give a last word to Anne Tui, who has been leading a lot of this work in management more generally. Couldn't agree more. Lots of opportunities for collaboration. Thank you from all of us. And thank you, John and Tiago behind the scenes for helping us do this webinar. And thank you to all my co-editors. Chris, anything you want to add?
Thank you, Rajesh. Thank you all. And I want to just thank everybody for the great questions and comments. And, and urge you, both practitioners and the scholars who are part of this, to think about how you can contribute from whatever position you have. And there may be opportunities here for collaboration. So if you're a practitioner who's part of this webinar, we would love to hear from you. You can write to us at the contact@bmbw.org. There are important problems that you as practitioners can help resolve, but you can also collaborate with academics who want to be part of this process. So let me just thank my co-editors again for helping us reach this place in the journey. We look forward to continuing to trudge this happy road, as they say, forward. And so I'll just close by saying that we have some upcoming webinars for the Journal of Marketing that are outside the scope of the BMBW initiative, but you can register for those. We'll announce the participants soon. If you want to see any of the articles, we put the link to the special issue, which is here in this box on the far right, all of the articles, but any article that's forthcoming, recently accepted, you can see all of those here on the Journal of Marketing area in this spot that I've circled. And of course, you can follow us and all of the announcements that we'll have for the Journal of Marketing on the website. So thank you all for taking the time and participating in the webinar, and we hope to see you again next time. Take care.